The Vedda people are an indigenous minority group in Sri Lanka, with various sub-communities such as the Coast Veddahs, Anuradhapura Veddahs, and Bintena Veddahs, all recognized as indigenous. While many Vedda people now speak Sinhala, their native languages are close to extinction. It is believed that the Veddahs were likely the island's earliest inhabitants, predating the arrival of other groups from India. A 2024 genetics study using advanced autosomal and mitochondrial DNA analysis revealed that the Veddahs are genetically closer to several tribes in India, including the Santhal, Yuang, Irula, Paniya, and the Palar caste, than to the Sinhalese or Sri Lankan Tamils. The study concluded that the Veddahs represent a genetically drifted group with minimal gene flow from neighboring Sinhalese and Tamil populations, and that maternal haplogroup M was a key factor in their initial settlement on the island. Other research has also highlighted genetic links between the Veddahs and the Sinhalese, Sri Lankan Tamils, as well as groups like the Irula, Kota, and Mula Kuruma of India, and tribes from Malaysia and Upper Myanmar. The Ratnapura district, located in the Sabaragamuwa province, is historically recognized as a region once inhabited by the Veddahs, as evidenced by scholars like Nandadeva Wijasekara. The name Sabaragamuwa is believed to mean the village of the Sabaras, or forest barbarians. Place names in the district, including Vedda Gala, Vedda Rock, Vedda Ella, Vedda Canal, and Vedikanda, Vedda Mountain, further support this historical connection. Wijasekara notes that a significant Vedda presence is still apparent in areas like Vedda Gala and its surroundings. The Veddahs are often considered the indigenous people of Sri Lanka. A 2011 study on dental features indicated a close genetic link between the Veddahs and other South Asian populations, as well as with Western Eurasian groups. A 2012 craniometric study also showed the Vedda people to have similarities with other South Asians, such as Sri Lankans, South Indians, and Punjabis, while differing notably from the populations of the Andaman Islands. A 2013 craniometric study by Dr. Raghavan found that the Vedda people are closely related to other groups in Sri Lanka and India, particularly the Sinhalese and Tamils. The study also revealed deep genetic connections between South Asian populations and modern populations from Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Dr. Raghavan noted that the cranial features of the Veddahs are most similar to other South Asians and distinct from Australo-Melanesians. While he observed differences in cranial characteristics between South Asians, including the Veddahs, and the Andamanese, he clarified that this does not contradict genetic evidence of shared ancestry between South Asians and the Andamanese. Dr. Raghavan explained that the distinctiveness of the Andamanese and South Indian crania does not undermine the idea of an ancestral South Indian connection between Southern Indians and Andamanese. He suggested that the differences may reflect the more specialized cranial features of South Asians compared to the Andamanese. The ancestors of the modern Veddahs are likely the earliest inhabitants of Sri Lanka, with their arrival estimated at around 40,000 to 35,000 years ago. While they share genetic links with other South Asian and Sri Lankan populations, they remain genetically distinct from other groups in Sri Lanka and exhibit significant intragroup genetic diversity. This diversity aligns with a long history of small subgroups that have experienced considerable genetic drift over time. A study on maternal mitochondrial DNA haplogroups in Sri Lankan populations found that the Veddahs primarily carry haplogroups U and R, with about 17% of them having haplogroup M, which is less common compared to Sri Lankan Indian Tamils and many tribal groups from mainland India, where haplogroup M is more prevalent. The study also showed that the Vedda population had a 45.33% frequency of haplogroup R compared to 25% in the low-country Sinhalese. While the Veddahs were found to be distinct from other South Asian groups, they were closer to the Sinhalese than to other populations. It was suggested that the branches of haplogroups R and U found in the Veddahs likely originated from ancestors in the Indian subcontinent. Another study on maternal haplogroups in Sri Lanka showed similar findings, with the Veddahs predominantly belonging to mitochondrial haplogroup N, which is common across European, Oceanian, Asian, and some Amerindian populations, along with its subgroups U and R. These haplogroups made up about 2/3 of the Vedda maternal lineages. Unlike other South Asian groups such as Sri Lankan Tamils, Sinhalese, and various Indian tribal groups, where haplogroup M is more common, the study highlighted that South Asian Indian haplogroups predominated in the three Sri Lankan groups, including the Veddahs. However, the Sinhalese, Sri Lankan Tamils, and Veddahs also exhibited significant presence of West Eurasian haplogroups. A separate phylogenetic analysis of mitochondrial DNA hypervariable segments confirmed that the Veddahs were genetically distinct from major ethnic groups such as the Sinhalese, Sri Lankan Tamils, and Indian Tamils in Sri Lanka. Additionally, a study on alpha-2 HS glycoprotein allele frequency indicated that the Veddahs and Sinhalese were biologically closer to each other than to most other ethnic groups in Asia. The Vedda language is of unknown linguistic origin and is classified as a language isolate. Early linguists and observers debated whether it was a distinct language or a dialect of Sinhala. Wilhelm Geiger, a major proponent of the dialect theory, also suggested that Vedda might be a relaxified aboriginal language. However, the Veddahs themselves view their language as separate from Sinhala, using it as an ethnic identifier to distinguish themselves from the Sinhalese people. Religion of the Vedda people. The traditional religion of the Veddahs is animism. The Veddahs in the interior, who have been influenced by Sinhala culture, practice a blend of animism and nominal Buddhism, while those along the Tamil-influenced East Coast follow a mix of animism and nominal Hinduism. A distinctive aspect of Vedda religion is the worship of deceased ancestors, referred to as Nayaku among the Sinhala-speaking Veddahs, who are called upon for hunting and the harvest of yams. The Veddahs also revere unique deities, such as Kandayaka. Like the Buddhist, Hindu, and Muslim communities on the island, the Vedas venerate the temple complex at Kataragama, reflecting the syncretic religious practices developed over more than 2 millennia of coexistence and cultural blending. Kataragama is believed to be the place where the Hindu god Skanda, or Murugan in Tamil, married a local tribal girl named Vali, who is traditionally thought to have been a Vedda. In addition to the prominent sites, there are several lesser-known shrines throughout the island that are sacred to the Veddahs, as well as other communities. Rituals of the Vedda, Vedda marriage ceremonies are simple affairs. The bride ties a bark rope known as Dia Lanuva, which she has twisted around the groom's waist. This act symbolizes the bride's acceptance of the man as her partner and life companion. While endogamous marriages between cross-cousins were the norm in the past, this practice has changed considerably, with Vedda women now marrying Sinhalese and Moor neighbors as well. In Vedda society, women are regarded as equals to men in many respects, including inheritance rights. Monogamy is the general custom, though widows often marry their husbands' brothers for support and comfort. The Vedda people do not follow a caste system, and funeral rituals are simple. The deceased's body is quickly buried without elaborate ceremonies. Clothing of Vedda people. Until relatively recently, traditional Vedda clothing was minimal. Men typically wore a loincloth held up by a string at the waist, while women wore a piece of cloth extending from the navel to the knees. Nowadays, their clothing is more covering. Men wear a short sarong that extends from the waist to the knees, and women wear a garment similar to the Sinhala Dia Redda, which reaches from the chest to the knees. Livelihood of Vedda people. Historically, the Veddahs were hunter-gatherers, relying on bows and arrows to hunt game, harpoons and toxic plants for fishing, and foraging for wild plants, yams, honey, fruit, and nuts. Many Veddahs have since adopted farming, often using slash-and-burn techniques known locally as hina. The Veddahs on the East Coast also engage in sea fishing. Their diet is notably rich in meat, including venison, rabbit, turtle, tortoise, monitor lizard, wild boar, and brown monkey, all of which are consumed with great enthusiasm. The Veddahs only hunt for food and refrain from harming young or pregnant animals.